Merica, so I don't know which one.
Uh,
The Bridget Ando, or I mean, there are a lot of different books about the
it's
1956.
by Charles River Editors.
No.
Okay. Well, that's the extent of my knowledge is that book
Uh huh.
and on basically what happened in Europe between 1900s and the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is Gábor for those who are listening or who are watching. I met you like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke, you preached at the church I was going to, and you stood out because you sounded different.
Yeah, definitely. With
It's
my pronunciation.
Where are you from?
From Hungary.
So you're from Hungary. So I heard that accent, and then that's when I really started doing the podcast, and I was like, I got to have this guy on the podcast. For anybody who really knows me, I say that quite often. I talk to people, I'm like, I got to have you on the podcast. But at that time, it didn't really seem really too relevant. So then I called you up about a week ago and said, hey, let's get to talking. Let me hear your story, because I think today, more than any day, I've got to give you the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So you grew up in Hungary. When were you born?
67.
1967.
January.
Okay.
Yep.
So roughly 11 years after the invasion.
Well, actually, so communism started in Hungary after the Second World War ended. So officially 47 when the communists came in rule, but 45 when the Second World War ended. There was a period of kind of so-called rebuilding the country phase, but the communists and the Russian, the Soviets ruled the country. And then in 56, Hungarians revolt against communism, and that's when
Tito was in power, right?
Tito was in Yugoslavia.
Okay.
Okay, so that's south of Hungary.
Okay.
Okay, so which is Yugoslavia is now Serbia and Croatia and Slovenia and Bosnia, and when that region, and all those nations were under one country or one, united
One rule. Yeah.
That was Tito, and but he was always kind of standing out from the traditional communist bloc.
Stalinistic, more Leninistic.
Well, yeah, they were. He was not so friendly with the Russians. Okay.
Yeah.
He was definitely a communist, but he was not a pro-Russian.
He was
guy.
more socialist.
Yeah, it's yes, still very brutal communism, but so 56 when Hungarians revolt against communism, they wanted freedom, they wanted out from the communist bloc, wanted to break the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain was between the Eastern and Western European countries after the Second World War happened. That's how they kind of divided in Yalta. That was in 45. Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt signed the Yalta. I don't know in English how you say it. Treaty.
Yeah.
And they kind of divided up Europe. So those countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia and East Germany and Hungary and Romania, Yugoslavia, became part of the Soviet bloc, and a communist country. So in 56, we wanted out, and the Russian army came in and just totally crushed the revolution, murdered a lot of people.
How many?
Oh gosh, tens of thousands of people died. About 200,000 people left the country or tried to escape. And there was a brutal repercussion and brutal oppression after that.
So your mother and father lived through that?
Oh, absolutely. So actually, my mother and my father, they tried to escape.
Okay.
Okay, so my mother was, I think, 17 at that time. And they were dating and they tried to escape. And a young 19-year-old soldier helped them. As they were crossing, they thought they were crossing the border to Austria, and the plan was that when they get to Vienna, they're gonna call his mom. So what happened is that at the border, somehow this 19-year-old soldier who helped them for money somehow messed up the direction, and they get caught. And the surgeon who caught them immediately, right at the spot, killed the 19-year-old soldier. Because it was, and then
Treason.
it was treason. So they were thrown in prison, and then, but that's just the, one pinnacle of the story, because all the guys in my mother's high school, all of them, every single one of them was murdered. They died during the revolution. None of them came back. So that class graduated without.
And did they
guys.
fight? Were they fighting back, or was this just that they just didn't subscribe to the?
Well, they were fighting back, and the Russians killed them.
Okay.
Or Hungarian communists killed them.
Sure.
So it was a pretty brutal revenge, or I don't know how you call it, by the Soviets, and they took even a more brutal control over the country. So there were kids who were persecuted. So for instance, there is a famous kid who was persecuted. He was like 15 or 16 at the time, but they were waiting until he was 18 so they could hang him. So it just, totally terrible. I mean, they massacred people on the main square right in front of our parliament. There were shooters. So it was a bad deal.
And that was in like the 40s.
That was 56. That's the 56th revolution. Okay. In 47, officially the communists came in power, but they cheated on the election. Okay, so they were a very small minority, but because the Russian army was in Hungary after the Second World War, they occupied the whole country. They kind of turned over the election. So
there
very
was no longer a democracy. Well,
oh yeah, I mean there was.
It used to be a republic, democracy, right?
Right.
Similar to the U.S.
Well,
in
I mean,
early 1900s.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit more complicated than that. So if we really did not have, we had elections, but don't think about elections like here. Okay, it was. Oh gosh, I mean, there are so many things in history that we need to go back, but the way it worked was to a point manipulated and strongly influenced by before the war we had the anti-communist party. I mean, Horthy Miklos was our leader, and there were different parties, there were elections. And there was a certain level of freedom, but...
Can you get a little closer to the
Yeah, but what happened is that... Okay, so after the First World War, so we need to go back a little bit.
Okay.
Because one thing comes from the other, so history doesn't happen independently.
Sure.
So... the First World War ended in 1918. Okay, so from 1914 to 1918, First World War. 1917, the Bolsheviks took over in Russia, and they murdered the Tsar, and communism. Lenin started. Later, Stalin became the main power in the 1920s. In 1919. After the First World War, the communists took over for a short couple of months in Hungary. But they were so hated because they were so violent.
These would be the Lenin boys?
These were the Lenin boys.
Okay.
They were so violent
Not with their speech, but like
with their actions. Okay.
which I'm gonna.
So yeah, listen. I mean, violence never starts with actions. It always starts with words.
Yeah.
So every war starts with words.
Sure.
So the narrative that happened, and then
And what was that lie though? Because we talked on the phone about this. Is that it usually starts with one simple lie.
well, did
Did they not hate like
Right.
Hungarians? Is it like a race war, or was it
There was that.
power?
Okay, think about that. After the First World War, there was so much pain in that region, so much losses. We lost 2/3 of our territories because of the Versailles Treaty. So we lost half of our population was taken away. So there was all kinds of upheaval and insecurity in the country. So it was very easy to blame certain people.
Sure.
Okay, so let's blame this, let's blame that. Then the communists took over for a short period of time, and that was just a brutal, they just murdered people right and left. And then Horthy Miklos, who was kind of the opposite right-wing side, okay, he came in power with an army.
Sure.
Throughout the communists, murdered a lot of communists, and started to blame, the blame shifting move to the left. So that war went back and forth, but really the right wing ruled the country between the First War and the Second World War.
Yeah.
And
this isn't like the right wing that we would think of in America.
No.
Like
It's
extreme right.
Yeah, I mean it is extremely right. It's at a point
Like
in the 40s.
they're putting the gun point in
Right.
your face.
In the 40s. So
we
when
use that metaphorically in America, is
Right.
that when the government has power, is that like
Yes.
you're at gunpoint. We use that a lot of times when arguments that in an argument that when the government is using force, like you are forced to do something, they hold you at gun. But this was literal.
This was literal, absolutely. So in the now, but there was a prosperity and peace.
Yeah.
So in the 20s and 30s, there was a growing economy. There was about there were a lot of poor people who was treated unjustly. But there was a significant segment of the society that lived a normal life, okay, and there was some kind of hope and future.
This would be your middle class.
That would be kind of a middle class,
Yeah.
Even in the countryside, or in cities. Now there were the laborers who were really losing in this.
There's probably no union.
Right, no union. Later there were unions. So okay, it led up to and then the whole Jewish question came in.
Sure.
Okay, so
And we're approaching World War II at this point.
right, we're
Which was
they blamed the Jews for the losses. So,
okay.
So the Germans, they went through, they lost the war, and Hungary and Germany was allies in the First World War,
Yeah.
as well as in the Second. Okay, I mean, it just one thing led to another. Okay, Germany was brutally punished after the First World War, just as Hungary was.
Were they on the right side or the wrong side?
The wrong side.
Okay.
The wrong side.
Both Hungary and Germany?
Yes.
In World War I?
Yeah, on the wrong side.
And they were fighting against who?
Okay, well,
The
against
English?
French and English,
Okay.
and then later I think in 1917 is when the U.S. joined the First World War,
Sure.
and so we lost, but that goes it goes back why the war started. We don't want to go back to the 1800s and all that.
Yeah.
But the point is that the First World War was the first world war in a sense that, well, we have never seen so many people die, like 10 million people
Yeah.
I mean, the losses was just enormous. So it was pretty obvious that they needed to punish nations.
Sure.
Now, Germany started the war, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire started the war.
Is there no question there, or is that?
No, there are questions there because the emperor, who was inheriting the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was murdered.
Franz Ferdinand.
Yes, Franz Ferdinand
Great
was
band.
murdered, and that's what triggered the war.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so he was murdered, actually in Serbia.
Was it a Jewish man that murdered him?
No, it was a radical leftist young activist who was part of a nationalist group.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you see where I'm going with that?
Right.
Was it a Jewish man that murdered Franz Ferdinand, and then that's how they placed the blame?
I don't think he was a Jew. I mean, I might be wrong, but that was not the question.
Okay.
So that led to the First World War, along with many other things, but that just was the fire, the spark,
the straw that broke the camel's back.
So that led to the First World War, which eventually led to the decline of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Germany.
Okay.
So the Germans were totally humiliated after the First World War, and that's what led to the rise of Hitler, because he was a very popular nationalist who kind of spoke into the national pride of Germans, and he blamed for all those things the Jews. Okay, I don't know what was his logic. I mean, but there was some logic to it, and the Great Depression really impacted Germany, which led further.
The Great Depression happening in America.
Which kind of triggered down to the whole world.
Sure. Was it because at this point America was the most powerful?
Yes, or it was really rising to become
industrialized.
The most
as far as the industry, America in that time was soaring.
Right. So that led to the bottom line. Okay, it led to the Second World War.
Yeah.
Because Germany sought revenge and getting back her territories, and getting justice. Now, along with that, there was this Nazi theory of racism against Jewish people and against homosexuals and against handicapped people, but part of it was
black people, Asian people.
But there were really not a lot of black people living in Europe at that time.
Sure.
So the Jewish law, and I think the numerus clausus, that was the first Jewish law in Hungary in 1920, which kind of it means numerus clausus means numbers on a class.
Yeah.
Meaning how many Jewish people can be allowed at certain professions. Because what they said we have Jewish people were so successful.
Sure.
Like my great-grandfather was Jew. Okay. They were so successful, and they were overrepresented among lawyers, among engineers, among medical professionals, all the economy. So they say, we're not going to accept as many Jews from to certain universities.
Okay.
Or to certain jobs.
So kind of like a reverse affirmative action.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a sign of the first sign of racism. And it's pretty much that happened, in Germany. It escalated very quickly. And that kind of pushed a lot of Jew to the left. Okay, and they became leftist,
Sure.
supportive of communist ideas.
Yeah.
They became communist leaders. So, or a lot of them left the country. And you know, a lot of talent until they could. And later, you know, when you know, in the 40s there was the Holocaust, which led to the death of, you know, the violent death of approximately 6 million Jews. We have lost, you know, at least five family members that we know of. We don't know even their names, but
Well, all those records were probably just.
well, they were wiped. We tried in the Holocaust Museum in Hungary to submit, you know, because my great grandfather's, we have his birth certificate. His five siblings died,
Yeah.
and we know his parents also perished, but we don't know any of the details. He survived because someone was hiding him in Budapest. So during those months when they were deported, and but even my grandmother had to. You know, she did not know she was a Jew until she was 16, when the Jewish law and was really became, you know, in power. And
So they didn't necessarily always have those laws in play. It was. They actually, I don't know. It makes me think of the affirmative action and brings it back to America, what's going on, and this they're now doing it in businesses where they say, well, you have to have this many people of this color, you have to have this many people of this color, and you have to have this many people of this color, primarily in like California and in New York.
Which is total racism to me. I mean, it's exactly what happened in Hungary.
Yeah.
Exactly. You cannot have this many people of this race.
Yeah. So they did that in Germany and in Hungary.
Right.
And then also in
Czechoslovakia. I don't know about that.
Czech was more with Russia at that time.
Yes. But I'm not aware of so much. I mean, at the beginning, Italy was part of it. In Italy, they had something, but I don't know exactly what they had. But Italy was on the wrong side of the war as well. But the bottom line here is that, well, we are not looking of the skill and the talent and the drive and but we look at your race.
Yeah.
That's how we make a decision, and that's what they did, and it started just with the law, but it led to the concentration camp. And then,
well, I've heard this said multiple times, is that culture is downhill from, or politics is downhill from culture. Is that how I hear it? Yes. Politics is downhill from culture, meaning that culture shapes politics. And it seems like the more that I look at where things are going is that people want to believe that culture becomes downhill from politics, as in the politics, the policies, the politicians, they shape the culture. Even as far back like with, Saul, the first king of Israel, is that they wanted to put Saul in power. They wanted a king, and I think the people of Israel wanted a king because they wanted somebody on this earth that would be able to tell them what was right and what was wrong.
Right.
Because there was the Bible.
Yeah.
But there was also like many people who got their shoes stepped on, and they were like, "What the heck, man?"
Right.
And they didn't want to go to the deacon, or how they
right, the tribal leader.
They didn't want to go to the elder, and they wanted then bring him there, and then like that's how Israel law would be at that.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I'm bringing New Testament and Old Testament. Anyway, all that to say, we were where.
Well,
World War II left
so the bottom line is that
I went off on we're
we're all over, but the bottom line is that, you know, there was a group of people to blame. Then that group of people needed to be isolated based on race.
Yes.
Then that group of people were tortured.
Yeah.
Then murdered.
Yes.
So it's just a slide. I mean, it starts with a word.
Yeah.
And it starts with differentiating people based on their race.
Yeah. So the lie in that instance would be
Right.
that your merit is determined by the color of your skin or your
Right.
nationality or your heritage,
Or your gender, or your
gender.
sexual orientation,
Yeah.
or whatever.
and not determined by
Your performance, or your
perf-
skills,
Sure.
or your talent, or your drive, that how hard you are willing to work. So, for instance, my great grandfather, you know, because he was a Jew, I mean, he was a wealthy businessman. Okay, just lost everything. I mean, you came out just what's on you.
Sure.
You know, and that, you know, that generation, and you know, losing friends, you're losing relatives, losing your siblings, and you don't even know where they are buried or what happened to them exactly. And you cannot even talk about that, because back then they were not allowed to talk. I mean, right after this horror of Second World War, where 50 million people were murdered, okay, died a violent death. Right after that, you know, communism came into our country. So there were total, you know, oppression and dictatorship, and more people were murdered and oppressed and put in concentration camps. Because a lot of people talk about and know about the Holocaust, you know, the concentration camps, Auschwitz,
Yeah.
or Birkenau, or you know, all the others, but people don't know about the concentration camps that the communists established and ran for decades and still are running. You know, in China, what's happening now with the Uyghurs, you know, a people group that we don't like, or they don't like, because of their ethnicity.
Yeah.
And millions are put in concentration camps.
Now, what are the Uyghurs? Are Uyghurs Christians and Muslims?
No,
Are they-
they're Muslims typically.
Okay.
But it's just a people group in China.
And they came from Russia? Is that?
It's in the
I tried
nor-
doing like some research,
Right.
and Wikipedia is no help when it comes to something
Right.
like
I mean,
this.
I don't know a lot of details about the Uyghurs, but they're
They're getting targeted exclusively for
exclusively by the communist government.
their religion or for their race.
Both.
Okay,
It's just like we need to re-educate them.
sure.
So force them into concentration camps. Now, for instance,
And this is so unheard of too. Like if you talk to somebody about this, it's like you have to be the term Uyghur. Like I know a little bit about this, but I don't I don't really know necessarily what a Uyghur is. I just know that there's video footage of people getting put into lines, head shaven, putting onto
right.
carts and
Yeah.
sending them somewhere.
Yep.
And then there's also a lot of other stuff that I probably can't say on YouTube without getting kicked off that I've heard that may or may not be happening there. But from the looks of it, it doesn't look good.
Oh, it's terrible. I
And
mean,
it's one of the biggest crises that we're facing right now in the
Absolutely.
world.
right. I mean, it's
So-
a genocide.
Yeah.
That's happening, and I mean, listen, anytime a tyranny happens, it never happens just nicely.
Yeah.
Okay. It all. I mean, no one really knows how many tens of millions have died in the gulags, in the Soviet gulags, which are the concentration camps.
Yeah.
My grandmother's brother spent 11 years in Siberia in the gulags. He was taken in 1945. He came back 1956, and his wife did not even know if he was alive or not. And she was waiting for him, and he just showed up one day. Okay, I mean, 11 years. Very few people survive 11 years.
Yeah.
in Siberia. Okay, in brutal circumstances. Their scientists say, or historians say, that probably between 40 to 60 million people perished by the terror of Stalin. Okay, Mao Zedong in China is responsible for about 80 to 100 million violent deaths.
Is that Mao, under Mao?
Mao, right.
Did you see this? I got to bring this up.
Yep, what?
Because we brought up Mao.
Okay.
So there's a mayor that is running for office in Portland, Oregon right now.
Okay.
Of all places. And she's wearing this garb of a skirt with Mao printed on it. And also Castro and...
Okay. I don't know
why. I thought I got to share this with him.
So
if we bring up Mao, then when I
so
saw that,
sad.
I was like, what is...
Because
it's so plain view though.
Right.
Like it's like what we've seen, and I'm sure you follow, is what's going on in Portland right now is that it's absolute chaos.
Right.
And then whenever something like that pops up and I hear a story on that, I'm like, that's not too much of a surprise.
It's trampling.
But who do I tell that to?
Well, it's trampling on those tens of millions people's dead body. It's like stepping and just spitting on. that's what it means. Just you're wearing that mass murders is an example. I cannot fathom why people would do that and would want to go to elevate and lift up examples and people who are responsible for mass murder, and we cannot even point any good thing. I can't point out. I lived half of my life under communism. Okay.
Yeah.
I cannot point out one good thing that communism gave to the world. Not one good thing. Not in science, not in education, not in economy, not in health,
entertainment,
nothing, not one thing. It brought tears, it brought sufferings, it brought oppression, it brought losses, it brought murder. My father, my grandmother, and my grandfather had been deported when my father was 14. And I have the deportation letter at home, which says that they got a 24-hour notice that in 24 hours they need to leave their house.
Sure.
With one suitcase, and they need to turn over their house to the government.
Yeah.
And then they were deported to a small village where they had to share a small room with another family, and they were forced labor on the fields.
Yeah.
So my grandfather got a stroke and died of it. So it just, in wherever I look in my family, I just saw tears and losses and pain, and we were stripped from our rights, and because of that, people were not able to live up to their opportunities, to live up to their talents and skills. Just because some people thought that it's a good idea to play communism and force equality, which was never equal. Communism was never equal. Okay, it never meant equality for anybody. Okay, it meant the greatest inequality that I've ever experienced in my life.
What do you say to those people, though, that say that they did it wrong? Like, I hear you out, and I'm with you entirely on this, who would say something like Mao did it wrong, and I am kind of like turning the table here from the skirt to, but those people who say, well, I sent you the last one.
Okay. So so let's. If I add up
like
the
Lenin did it wrong.
Let me say this.
Hitler did it wrong.
That if any experiment, any scientific experiment,
sure,
or any social experiment,
yeah,
leads to over 200 million people's violent death
Yeah.
leads to poverty, leads to stripping people's right, then I don't think we need more proof that the idea is wrong.
Sure.
So how many more people need to die before we believe that this is a false idea? How many people need to suffer? How many lives needs to be destroyed? And how many nations needs to be completely destroyed before we believe that, oh gosh, that's not a really smart idea.
Do you believe in a father in a family situation being more of a dictator? A communist kind of idea in a family unit?
No. What do you mean? Explain this to me.
Okay. So I listen to this guy, Matt Walsh, and he's kind of funny sometimes. He says that if I was dictator, this is what I would do. He's joking, but he brought up a point how this idea that having a dictator, someone who does determine your rights from wrongs, what you do, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, the only one who really can do that would be like a father to a child, right?
Well, because the child is not mature enough, and legally we say is not mature enough to bear the responsibility of adulthood.
So communism, that same idea, but it's applied to the masses. It's essentially saying that we believe that you are not capable of making these correct decisions.
Yeah.
And we should be able to make the decisions for you.
Right.
And so we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And we're going to put this in place.
Well, that's called, and this is what the communists did, collective re-education.
Yeah.
That's George Orwell's 1984. If anyone read the book, it's exactly what they are doing.
Yeah.
This book is not good for you. Oh, this is the new dictionary.
Yeah.
And this is how we define things for you.
Yeah.
Control everything.
So you see Marxism happening in America right now.
Well,
or communism.
Not it. Okay.
Or do you? I'm not saying you.
You don't. America is not living in Marxism. Okay, it's not a communist country at all.
Well, I know that because I'd probably be dead by now.
Yes, you would. Okay, and I would be too.
Yeah.
Okay. So communism is when the government, there's a difference between ideological communism and the governmental communism.
Sure.
Okay, there are a lot of communistic ideas out here.
Yeah.
But ruled by communists means that a small minority controls everything in the country by the rules that they create in their very brutal and very violent power game.
Yeah.
With each other, because they murder each other as well.
Okay.
As they fight for power.
Yeah, because the Lenin boys didn't just kill
they were
citizens, they killed politicians, they killed...
Stalin was...
powerful figures that were...
viciously after all his party members. And he killed...
Do you think Lenin boys were in America too at that time then?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
But he was viciously murdering all his party, comrades.
Sure.
So
to remind them who is in power.
So it was, this whole idea, that it comes from that. Well, men, they are not able to lead their life, so we need to tell them how to live. Just like we need to control them.
Yeah.
Communism is all about control. It's all about the few, the animal farm. I don't know if you read that from George Orwell. These are the books that the kids should read in high school.
Did they ban George Orwell?
George Orwell, wrote The Animal Farm, which
in 1884. Is that right?
The 1984.
1984?
It's a different book.
Okay, yeah, I know some of it is that it's like in a world. I really need to read more.
But it's like, it's a funny story about an animal farm where every animal is equal, but there are some who are more equal. Okay, so the some who are more equal, actually, the most equal one is the pig. Okay, and he becomes the ruler of the whole animal farm, but he's just really dumb and stupid. And
it's called what?
The Animal Farm.
Okay.
Okay, it's a funny read, but it's a very realistic read.
Sure.
About communism.
Yeah.
And what happens in the communist society, it did not matter what your skills were. It was the only thing that mattered, that were you a good comrade.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, I mean, the stupidest people got into power with no education and just like, and they made stupid rules, and so the stupid ruled, the uneducated ruled over the educated.
Yeah.
And they were absolutely brutal.
Like, what's a rule that was in Hungary at the time that you grew up? That,
oh gosh, I mean,
or a law. These weren't just, they were
well,
laws
every kid had to go to become a pioneer. They tried to force everybody into the Communist Party. There were, oh gosh, I mean, there's so many. We had to march on May 1st and wave, the red flag, the Russian flag.
Yeah.
And, we had to sing communist songs, and there were no free enterprise, man.
And this was
I mean, you couldn't own a business.
This was within your lifetime?
Oh, absolutely.
19 what?
Well, I born in 1967. Communism collapsed in 89, 90.
Okay.
90
So
when
you
we
were
had
a
the
child,
first
right?
election. Okay. So up till I was 23,
Okay.
all my education took place
Yeah.
under communism. So there were no free enterprise.
Were you required to go to college?
No. In elementary school, you were required to become a pioneer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You told me. Well, what is a pioneer?
A pioneer it's for elementary school.
Because that sounds cool. I'm just saying.
Well, it's little pioneers.
Okay.
Are little communists.
Okay.
Okay, and we had to wear a uniform with a red, scarf or something like that, and you can look up on the internet it was really silly, and
But you had like a manifesto that you'd read, like
yeah,
a pledge.
and then we had to sing, and there were camps.
Was there dances?
If
there weren't any dances, I would.
But
I wouldn't be one then.
No, when you were little, I mean, there was no option as going to elementary school. It was required.
Okay.
Now, when I got into high school, there was the Youth Communist Party. Okay, and I told them that I'm not gonna be a part of that because I became a believer. Okay, right at that time, before I started high school. And I told my teachers and the school principal that I'm not gonna be a member of that. And she told me that you cut your own throat, boy. I mean, you're never gonna go to university, and you cannot do that. I said, sure I can. I'm not gonna. You can kick me out, but I'm not gonna be a part of that. And which I'm really glad I did that, but it had a price. So it just, if except one other guy did not become a member of the in our whole class.
Did they kick your ass? Did they?
Oh gosh, yeah, they tried
spit on you.
They tried to force, and they tried to manipulate.
Did you have friends that became them, and then they were like, "Hey,
no,
man,
I mean
so
everybody
see
was
you."
laughing at it, but it was very, very, advantageous to become a member.
Sure, I mean status.
So it was status. It was it
automatically
guaranteed
went to the bottom rung if you
it
weren't a part of
guaranteed you extra points to get into college.
Girls didn't talk to you if you.
No,
is
no,
this
girls did not care about that.
Really?
Oh, no. Everybody was laughing. Everybody thought it's a stupid thing.
Sure. But it awarded you in the going to
in your
prestigious
career.
schools and
Right.
in your okay.
Right.
I said this to somebody recently. I thought it was just the other day. It was eating chicken sandwich, and I told him, I said, you know what? It's got to be interesting to be very liberal male, single male, and go and have a conversation who is with a woman who is also a very liberal woman, because it seems as though like that conversation wouldn't go and I say liberal, but I mean left, far left,
Right.
far left, is that conversation wouldn't have any conflict.
Right.
I think that today where the center is if you're,
Yeah.
I mean, today a Democrat 10 years ago is a Republican today,
Right.
right? If they follow the same,
Rules.
yeah. So, anyway,
I mean,
I have been thinking about like,
yeah.
because you probably were a pretty cool guy in that case. Like,
no,
you were
I don't know.
I'm not about that. I'm about this. And so when you had a conversation, when did you meet your wife? Let me ask you that.
Well, I was 18
Okay.
when I met her.
And did she follow that same rule?
Yes, she did. She did not. Yeah, she did not enter to the Youth Communist Party either.
Okay.
So none of. I mean,
Was she attracted to the guys that were?
No, she was a believer. So
Okay.
you know, some of us who took our faith really seriously, we just said, and we were old enough. Okay, I mean, like in high school. No, we're just not doing that.
You were probably much more mature than the 18-year-olds today.
Yeah, I was. I had to be because of my upbringing.
Or just anyone in that generation, actually.
Well,
really, that-
it's because, and I'll tell my story. As we're gonna.
if I let you.
Yeah, if you let me. but because of my upbringing, I had to. But back to one thing about this whole communist thing. So because people. It's staggering to me how fast people forget history.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, this happened 30 years ago.
Even last week.
Yeah, yes. I mean, but this happened 30 years ago. Communism collapsed in Eastern Europe. Okay, and yeah, I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
And no one remembers. And now people are thinking kind of romantically about, oh gosh, I mean, no, it was terrible. It was stripping away people from their rights.
Yeah.
We were under total oppression. There was no religious freedom. There was no freedom of press, freedom of expressing opinions, no freedom of gathering.
It's freedom of speech.
No freedom of travel.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not like, oh, I'm going to go out to Austria. No. Every third year, if you were lucky and the government let you, you got a permission and on a different kind of passport, which made you, which allowed you to go to Western countries. Okay, we had two passports. One that allowed us to go to Soviet bloc countries, Soviet communist countries, and another one that allowed us to go to the sinful West. You know, they always call, the dreadful, sinful West. And, they were drinking Coke, which is that's drug. They're drugging people.
Caffeine.
That's how they control, young people there. I mean, we were not allowed to listen to music from the West. And
It's fairly legalistic.
and it was total control. I mean,
It was a religion, though.
yeah, it was a complete religion where you had to bow down before the picture of Lenin and the communist leaders, and they were up everywhere. And
During your growing up, really?
absolutely. And you had to march and wave to the.
They looked up to,
Oh yeah,
so like a linen skirt,
right.
pun intended, was like, that was, yeah, that'd be cool if they did the Prince. I don't know.
Right, and then, but because of what happens in systems like that, in controlled systems, where tyranny happens, it doesn't allow people to live out freely live out their talents and gifts.
Yeah.
So there's no free enterprising. there is no advancement in technology
There's
or
no
in
profit,
science.
right?
No profit. You couldn't own anything. Listen, I mean, for a family like ours to own a car, I mean, it was not like, oh, I'm going to a shop and I'm going to buy a car. The way to get a car, it was one, you only could get a car which was manufactured in a communist country, which was just a junk. I mean, a junk, terrible junk.
I don't know. I like the Audis.
That was West Germany, not East Germany, West Germany. Okay, but we never had Western cars.
Okay.
We had Warburgs and Trabants and
Just the
and
names
Volga
to buy it.
and Trabant was a from cardboard. I mean,
Yeah.
and in the body. So, but it's not like you go and buy it. You had to submit a request for the government, pay the money, and wait 5 years for the permission to buy it. And then you wait maybe another 3 years before you can get it. So it was not like it's
not like America where you can just go down the lot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Even if you don't even have the money for it, you can get a
You
car
can-
for 20% interest and
no.
go cruising down with the
But that was
2020.
true with every product.
Yeah.
I mean it.
So you couldn't start businesses.
No, I mean I haven't seen a banana probably until I was 13 or 14 years old.
You say banana?
Banana. Or orange, or stuff. I mean, when I was little, there was food stamp.
Okay.
So there was a portion of meat that a week my parents could get.
Huh.
There was bread and there was lard.
So me
There
going
was-
to Aldi's and complaining that you can only get one meat during the
Well, you should
COVID.
not. Okay, I mean it's because literally in school
I was complaining about that.
in
This is-
school what we got for breakfast was bread with lard and a little onion.
So that one scene in that one movie where the kid comes up, can I get some more, please? And it's just this like soupy.
Yep, that's true.
Ugh.
And actually, I loved the bread with lard. What I can't stand is the peanut butter.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can't stand
Don't
that.
let George Washington Carver hear you say that.
But
He'll roll over at his grave. That was a terrible joke. I'm sorry. I had to say
Right,
it.
I
You
don't
know who
know.
that is?
What?
George Washington Carver.
No.
He invented peanut butter.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I did not know that. But
Now you know. You're teaching me things. I feel I got to throw something out at you that.
So we have a question from the audience. How were you introduced to Christianity in
Uh-huh.
a communist country?
right.
Yeah. How did you become a believer?
Yeah. Well,
At 17?
no, at 13.
At 13?
14. Well, I got to go back to a point in our family. I was 8 years old when my parents divorced, and it was a very bloody divorce. And what happened is that my father was very brutal and very abusive. He was womanizing and all that, but he was physically abusive as well. And so, for instance, when I was 6 years old, I had a bicycle accident and I broke my leg, and he forced me to walk on my leg without a splinter. Okay, and then there was a lot of other things that he was really brutal, and but for some reason, and it's a complicated story, I'm not going to go into it, but my sister, after my parents divorced, I stayed with my dad, and my mom and my sister went with my mom. And my mom wanted to commit suicide. There were a lot of really sad stories. But when I was 12, my father remarried. That woman had 2 other daughters and brought into the marriage. And I really suffered, from my father. He was, beating me. He was.
Is he still alive?
No, he's dead. 10 years ago he died. But finally, when I was 12, I got to a point where I said, to my mom that I'm gonna die if I stay with my dad, and I became so sick around age 8 and 9, right after the divorce, with asthma, that the doctors told my mom that I'm gonna be dead by the age of 18 and 20. I mean, during communism, we did not have the right medication. So there was a year, I think it was when I was around 10, when I spent 200 days in the hospital out of 365, and I was in and out in hospitals. Then they later thought I have leukemia. Then there were so many problems. So at 12, I thought, I can't live. So my mom tried to initiated the court, went to court, and wanted to get the custody over me. But her lawyer told her that there's 1% chance for you to win this case because the jury or the judge, we don't have jury, the judge, never changed the decision. So, and there was a decision 4 years prior, but we went through the case. It took a year. So I was living with my father while I was going on court against him because I wanted to go to be with my mom.
So you felt the backlash
Right.
physically.
It was terrible. So on 1979, September or October, it was September, I ran away from my father. And we lived in the countryside at the lake. And I ran away to the capital city, Budapest, where my mom lived.
Mm.
And my mom was hiding me in a hospital. And but my father chased me with the police. It was a very difficult story. I was hiding in the attic of the hospital so they couldn't find me. But when
Was your mom a nurse, or how'd you get?
It's through she was paying to the doctors.
Okay.
Bribe. That's how you get healthcare back in under communism. You tip the doctor.
Sure.
So what happened is that the next time when they had to, I had to appear before the judge as well.
Mm.
At such a young age, and I was in a terrible condition. And in tears, I told the judge that I wanna live with my mom. And then my father's lawyer just attacked me that you're just a liar, you're just all kinds of stuff. But the bottom line is that it was a miracle that the judge changed the decision and put me with my mom. Matter of fact, it was a lady. She said that my father cannot even see me, doesn't have the right to see me, because he was so violent and so dangerous for my health.
Mm.
And that was the time when I met with my mother. Remarried, so I had a stepfather, and that was my stepfather's cousin was a believer. And that was the first time I've heard the name Jesus. I never heard.
How old?
I was 13, almost 14, 13 years old. Never heard the name Jesus. Never heard anything about God. I thought this guy came from the moon. Nobody believes in God. This is a communist country. We were thought that we came from nothing and we were going to
The government
nothing.
would be God.
Right. Lenin was God. They thought Lenin lived, Lenin lives, and Lenin will live forever. So it's like he's the Alpha and the Omega.
Really?
Yeah. So Lenin is God.
So really, really
Yeah.
I was almost being hyperbolic when I said like a religion.
Yeah. It is a religion.
Yeah.
It's an idol worship religion, and around an ideology that impersonalized in a few person, like Marx and Engels and Lenin and Stalin and you can go on.
Sure.
So that's when so the first time when I've heard this guy telling about Jesus, I thought he's crazy. But when he told me that God is a loving Father, and he can become my Father and can heal my wounds, and he accepts me, that's when I started to think that, I had a brutal father. And I said, God, if you really exist, I want you to become my Father. I want you to love me. I want to experience your care. I want you to protect me from my father. And, he took it more seriously, that prayer, than I did. So I got involved. I went to a Presbyterian church, then later got involved in an underground Bible study. I took it was a really radical change for me. God became real. Very personal and real in healing me. I was at the verge of death because of my health. And when I saw a picture of my dad, the ambulance had to come and take me to the hospital. That's how, I got an attack, an asthma attack.
Okay.
I was just like, they had to put me on oxygen.
Yeah.
And so, severely, injured by all these trauma that I went through, running away from my father. For 9 years, I have not seen my father. And so during that time, I got involved in a church where, thankfully, the gospel was preached. But don't think church is like here. Okay, it was, it was persecuted by communists.
Every time you guys met up, you were
risking... they, not every time, but they knew who we were.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got, in 1984, I met with an American who was a missionary, but I did not know that. He had a cover job. Okay, and he started to disciple me. His name was Mike Uno. He was with Campus Crusade crew.
Have I met him, or
No,
have I just known his
no.
name?
And a year later, I met with someone that you know,
Yeah.
Dave Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And
He's my favorite.
right.
That was a good. Oh yeah. It wasn't like
Yeah.
oh no. It was like I liked it.
And then later in '89 they moved to Hungary.
Okay.
With it, they started to disciple me, and I started to learn how to share my faith. And
Wait, real quick. How old is Dave?
Dave is 10 years older than I am.
So he was
in his
pretty close to your
right.
age?
I was, in '85 I was 18, so he was 28, 29, something
Okay.
like that. And so I started to share my faith. I went through high school, finished high school. I wanted to become a pastor. And but because the communists controlled the church, so the official church, to become a pastor, so when I applied, we had to go through a week-long interview series of interviews, and the government representative was there during the interview, and that was the summer when I was arrested because I was sharing my faith at the beach. And they searched our home. They took Bibles and, illegally printed, Christian literature like the 4 Spiritual Laws away from us, which we, on a typing machine. How do you call it? Typewriter. We were, copying.
So you were making
Right. We were making
more
copies.
Bibles.
More
because you couldn't print
4
them.
laws. We couldn't print Bibles, but they were smuggled into the country.
Oh, okay.
So I got Bibles, but and there were certain numbers of Bibles that the government allowed to be printed, but very controlled.
Sure. It was more for education.
Yeah, for those who are really religious and go. So it was kind of a show to the world that
we care about.
Right. Yeah.
We still care. Yeah.
So and that was the year when I was arrested for sharing my faith, and then they said that you're a bad influence on future pastors, your peers. So we're not going to accept you to a seminary. I applied for a Presbyterian seminary. So a year later, they accepted me to like evening courses.
Yeah.
Where I'm not with my peers, but with adults, okay, older people who wanted to become pastors.
Sure.
So that's how I became a believer and got involved in ministry. Met with some missionaries, but I did not know they're missionaries until the Iron Curtain failed, and the Iron Curtain came down, and because they had cover jobs and cover names.
Really?
Yeah. So we hardly.
Did they speak Hungarian? Is
Some,
Hungarian even a language?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a very difficult language. It's a
Okay.
very difficult language.
You have to excuse me. Sometimes I think that I say stupid things.
No, that's fine.
We're live, and I don't want to.
That's totally fine. But it's a very difficult language. Some did speak. I did not speak any English back then, so they had to speak Hungarian to me.
Okay.
Okay, so, but it was really.
But they didn't speak English to you because they didn't want you to know.
Well, they did, but I knew they are Americans.
Okay.
But I thought they're.
Did other people know that they were Americans, or they
Yes,
were like
because
we
they had cover
immigrated
jobs.
here? Okay.
They had cover jobs, so they came, with working with the U.S. Embassy
Okay.
or working for studying in this university.
Who funded this?
Well, they were missionaries, so their supporters funded them.
Okay, so churches.
Churches and
Gave them
individuals
money.
who supported that particular missionary.
And so they had to like pay off a bunch of people, right? And like how, because like to say that you work for the what did you say,
A mission agency, like crew.
no, the places that which the countries have that are in each country that
The embassies.
yeah, the embassy. If you were to say that like you worked for the embassy, it's like that's a little bit question to where like, if you said you worked for the embassy and you got found out, that's not any good.
Well, no. I mean,
'Cause
they
America
were
would be
some.
ticked
No.
and
I mean, and there were some of them were really working for the embassy.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, one person that I know, I mean, she was working in the embassy.
Okay.
Okay, that she had a cover job. Her husband was studying in the Karl Marx University. Okay, so as an American, he came here to Hungary to study the communist economy. So maybe
Was that Dave that did that?
no, that was Mike. That was another guy, and just like that provided a visa
Okay.
for them
Yeah.
to be there.
I see.
Some started a small business. Okay, how could we, the communists was they were in shortage of dollars.
Okay.
So
when an American came in there, then they were
anyway they could get dollar.
okay.
They wanted that. So
Well, because in a socialist society, is that
it's closed.
where does the money come from?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
in
a
a
closed
capitalist
system.
society, it's more driven to let's open more businesses.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
And no regulations.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
It's in a communist society, everything is owned by the government. Everything.
Now I said
even your home.
socialist. You say communist.
Right. I mean, they're. I don't know how to differentiate. I mean, it's because in Hungary they said, well, we're a socialist communist country, okay. It's either there is free enterprise, or not.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean it's either respect of personal property and personal freedom or not.
Okay.
Okay,
So the difference between Hungary and America would be that in our Constitution is that your property is an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
So harm against your property is violence against you.
But listen,
Whereas
in
it's-
communism, you as an individual doesn't own yourself
Sure.
because you are the property of the government.
Yeah.
You is not you. You are a representation of a class,
Yeah.
of the labor class, of the ruling class, of the you're not you.
And is that the difference between communism and socialism then?
Well, I haven't seen real socialism.
Okay.
Okay, I mean it's I don't know if because they're saying, well, Sweden is a socialist country, and no, they're not. They're a capitalist country.
Well,
Okay,
Didn't the prime minister come out and he said that Bernie Sanders, you're wrong about us.
Yeah,
We are not a socialist country
that's a communist country.
or a democratic socialist country, right?
Yeah, it's it's either there is free enterprising, free, you can own your property, you have freedom of speech, or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there are various ways. There are various types of tyranny. Now, some call communism, or some call just fascism. I mean, listen, the ultra right and the ultra left.
Sure.
It's not two opposite end of a pendulum. It's a circle.
This is so great.
It's the same.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Can you talk while he's doing that? Can you talk
Yeah.
more about the Iron Curtain and what that was like, the differentiation between the two? And the two
Right.
sides?
The behind the Iron Curtain there were different countries had different levels of freedom. Hungary was more kind of we called it the happy barrack, the happy part of communism after the 70s. There were a little bit more freedom, there were a little bit more music, there were a little bit more color, but still it was oppression and still control of the government. There was still no free enterprising, and there were countries where they controlled, like Romania. It was under Ceausescu. I mean, it was a brutal dictatorship. He very openly murdered people, and so it's a spectrum. Let's think about a spectrum, but the whole spectrum is under tyranny. You don't own things. You don't have freedom of speech. You don't have freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, gathering, and the government controls everything.
So was that gradient? Was it like the further towards Moscow or something you got?
Yeah.
The harder communism got?
Typically, yes, or the more stupid the the ruler was, the more abusive he was. Okay, so like Ceausescu, I mean, it was just like a complete. I mean, he was so dumb, like unbelievable, and just brutal. I mean, if you read it, some of the stories, it's horrific. One of the things that they did, I mean, there's a famous building in Budapest, Hungary. It's the Andrássy Street 60. Okay, that's where the communists took people and tortured them. And now it's called the House of Terror. So you can visit actually the place and look through it. And it's in the heart of the city. And one of the things they did to people to torture them is they cut a Stalin glove. Stalin glove, the glove that you put on your hand. This is what it was. They cut a piece, they cut your skin on your belly. They cut the skin on both sides, and they put your hands under your skin, where the fat part is. That's the Stalin glove. That's what they did to prisoners. Okay, and then they or
And this wasn't just murderers or
that was just
this was
fun. Okay, let's torture people.
But the people who got tortured were not murderers or
no.
pedophiles.
They were political, opponents or anyone.
Sure.
Anyone reported you.
Yeah.
Just said anything bad about you, they could just the black car just could be there and take you.
Well, they saw everybody equally. And so if you were equally good, then you are equally bad. So even if you were someone who was trying to spread faith,
they just tortured people.
they saw you just as
a threat.
exactly, yeah, the enemy.
So
I
go
tried.
ahead.
I tried running up there and I couldn't find it. I drew this out one time and it was essentially the political spectrum. And you've seen like the four, and I labeled it and drew it out. Somebody was asking me about it, but I'd never heard anyone ever say the same. This because I drew it out on a piece of paper and then I explained it so many times that I thought. You know what, the left and the right, it's more like this, and I took it and made a sphere out of it.
Yeah, it's a circle. So it's the farther you go on the right and left, the closer you get to each other. So
Yeah.
the far right and the far left are both tyranny. It's both murders. One is called fascism. The other is called communism.
Yeah. This is so crazy. I
So-
couldn't find it. Anyway, I looked everywhere.
But it's and a lot of people,
But the one thing that's similar to of them is that they both are aiming towards a utopia.
yeah. But both are driven by extreme power hunger.
Yeah.
It's all about power. Okay, it's who can have control over people.
Yeah.
I have the right to tell people how to live because I think I have the Holy Grail and I know what's best.
Yeah.
And I need to force my beliefs on people. But the problem with this is that the moment we disrespect people's autonomy, people's
Agency.
yes, that they're independent beings,
Sovereignty.
they with the responsibility and the opportunity to make decisions for themselves, and they will held accountable for it. So, why? Because God created us to reflect His image, and God is responsible. So He wants us to be responsible. God is free, and He wants us to be free. God carries and bears the consequences of His decisions, so as we. So once we take away that freedom from people, and then we violate the core of their being. They're the image of God. And the philosophies that are tending to do that are always atheistic.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's you just need to look at the history of Europe, because the major influencers of the European thinking were in the 1800s. Okay, Nietzsche, who changed the view of God. God is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but he himself said that once God is dead, there are two options: either nihilism or totalitarianism. So either people are going to live a nihilistic life, just I don't care what happens, I'm going to sleep whatever, do whatever, or we're going to move into totalitarianism, because without God, those are the two options. The other major influencer were Marx, who restructured the society and said that people in a society can be put into two groups: oppressors and oppressed. And that's the dynamic of a society.
But he used the words bourgeois or something.
Bourgeois, yeah, they are the oppressors,
And the
and the laborers, you know, the proletarians, yeah,
Okay.
they're the oppressed.
Sure.
So he restructured the society, stripped away, you know, both of these men stripped away the dignity of the individual. They redefined man. And once you redefine, and then Darwin, who said that we're just the evolutionary product of chance and time, a very, we're a random product of a very unintelligent process. And because of that, I mean, from his thinking flows from the eugenics, which is, you know, the racism. The fundamental basis of racism is from Darwinism. There is a book called, I forget the author, which says that from Darwinism to death camps. From Darwin to death camps.
Mm-hmm.
So it just led to it. And then Freud, who redefined the human psyche and sexuality and basically said that we're sensual beings. So once we redefine man, Marx said that we are economics beings. Darwin said we are biological beings. Freud said we are sexual beings. You know, once we redefine man from the Bible, away from the Bible, then what happens is that it leads to this dictatorship. It leads to nihilism. It leads to tyranny. So that's what we're witnessing right now. Because the Bible defines man two ways. It's an image of God
Mm-hmm.
who carries all the beautiful giftings and dignity that God wants us to reflect to Him. You know, we have the ability to make decisions, ability to communicate, ability to create, ability to carry responsibilities, to discover, to own, a lot of things. But also, the Bible says that we are fallen. We're fallen image. The fallen means that, yes, we are the image of God, but we're not perfect images. That image is broken. And that broken image needs to be restored.
Yeah.
And the only way it can be restored is through Christ,
Yeah.
through the perfect image. So that's, and what we witness right now in society is that as God is taken out from our knowledge, and then what happens is that we automatically redefine who we are.
We move towards. That was interesting. The way you put that is that because once you take God out of biology, then you move towards Darwinism.
Right.
And once you take God out of an economy, you move towards Marxism, socialism. Right.
So and the danger in this is that it's once we start to define things godless without the creator
Yeah.
of us, then we take away meanings. Because if there is no creator, there is no meaning.
Yeah.
Because the creator gives the purpose of the creation. You know, someone who created this table, probably you guys, you know, created a meaning with it so we could store things on it.
Yeah.
Okay? Without the intention of the creator, the creation is meaningless. So if we take away God, then we are meaningless.
Then we become just tools.
We become tools.
Or we become obstacles.
Right. And you become a tool.
You became an oppressor or an oppressed.
You became an asset or liability.
Yeah.
In the social war.
Mm-hmm. To create the proper environment.
Yeah.
Utopia.
Right. Exactly. But it's so godless because you are not your skin color. You are not your gender. It's part of who you are.
Yeah.
But it's not ultimately who you are. Ultimately, you are the image of God, an image bearer, whose responsibility is not to reflect a social construct, but whose responsibility is to reflect the image of God, God Himself. And once you are not more than part of a social class, then you are nothing more than an avatar of that class. You're just a rep of that class.
A reflection.
A reflection. Based on the social construct, I'm an avatar of the white middle-aged man. White middle-aged straight man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an avatar of the oppressor, of the so-called oppressor class. So if someone identifies me based on my external, appearance,
Yeah.
they will automatically strip me away from my God-given identity.
And that's happening more and more and more.
Right. And I cease to become an individual, and I just become an asset to one class. Now, Marx is the ultimate creator of the classification of society, because he was the one who created every society has classes. Of course, we see this the Indian, in the religion in India, the classes, the untouchables, but we see how devastating every time when we block people into classes.
Yeah.
It's all regardless of their color or their birth or their gender. It leads to oppression and a terrible abuse of certain people, and it strips away the opportunity for that individual, for an individual from any background, to come up and live out his or her maximum potential and reflect the image of God.
What's redefined now is intersectional or intersectionality.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that of classes is that you can be here, 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 here. If you're a it's a hierarchy of just how many of these things do you check off, and it's determined by, like if I were just to be candid with you, is that a black trans woman in this new hierarchy that's formed is the most oppressed.
Right.
Whereas a white middle-aged man is the most of an oppressor.
Yeah.
And so there's one question, it's so silly when you think of questions earlier on whenever I'm doing these things, but it's like, and we're answering that question as we talk, but like how relevant is this to where we're at today? Where is America as a nation going? Like, are we headed? Are you more optimistic or are you more pessimistic as to?
Well, it's very hard to say. Okay, first of all, it's really hard to say because I'm still in kind of a culture shock after 3.5 years living here.
I didn't know that you only lived here 3.5 years.
Right.
So I came up to you as soon as you come to me. Hey, get on this podcast.
Right. So actually, we're new. We knew a lot of Americans with living in America and traveled to America a lot of times prior, but moving to America, it's 3.5 years. So I'm the least expert in this. Okay, I'm an outsider. But let me tell you something about outsiders. Okay, let me use this analogy that I remember when there was a time when I was in campus ministry, and a lot of time I visited dorms.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things when I entered into a dorm room, especially a guy's room, full of guys, the first thing is it stinks. Just like, guys, can we open the window? And all of them looked at me. Why? What's wrong? It stinks, guys. Don't you smell it? No, we don't. When you are inside a closed room, you don't you don't smell it. You don't smell it. It stinks.
Yeah.
Okay, you just get used to it.
Yeah.
So although I'm an outsider, and I'm just walking in,
Mm-hmm.
there are certain smells that are very familiar.
Yeah.
And maybe because it's familiar, I react to it, and it scares me. Okay, and obviously it's super polarized, the country. I mean, I've never seen any society being so polarized, and it's a question that, for how long can this be so polarized, or how far this can go, without a major cataclysm, a major something that happens where it either clashes. That's one thing that can happen, which can be violent and brutal and hurtful, or repentance. A miraculous intervention from God. So what I see is that the right is going further right, the left is going further left, and people in the middle are kind of pulled, although they don't want to, because they want to stay in the middle. Because 80% of the people, I think, just want to live a normal life and just leave me alone. I mean, I want to just live my life, and please don't teach my kids gay stuff. But I don't care much about China or whatever. They just want to live their life. But because the 10% on both sides are pulling the whole society, the whole is like a magnet, is pulled and stretched. And in reality, it only takes 10% to change any culture. Only take 10%. But that 10% needs to be very vocal and sometimes violent. That's how the communists took over in Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were a very small minority. Hardly anybody voted for them. But they were vocal, violent, and they terrorized the vocal minority, the vocal majority.
Well, that's because then that other 10% who were very vocal and not violent and...
Right. Or the majority were just silent.
Yeah.
They did not see the danger. Oh, I don't care. Oh, well, they're just talking.
Yeah.
But once, there were the signs when, people were beaten up, or people's homes were broken in. Oh, people were murdered.
10% in the middle, I guess I should
No.
specify.
10% on the left, on the communist
Yeah,
left.
and then there's the 10% on the right that is loud and obnoxious, but then the 10% in the middle who do try to speak up and speak.
Yeah, I mean,
or just
yes, and they get terrorized.
They get dinged by not only the 10% on the
both.
left.
Both.
I shared a story. Really small. I shared it once with the folks who listened, but yeah, I went to a Trump rally, like a parade, and I wore a Joe Biden shirt up there.
You were beaten.
Pretty close to it. Yeah. It didn't really work out, and I tried explaining to them like, no, I'm not. I'm a conservative. I plan on voting for Trump.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this. I had to yell it because they were yelling at me, and I was like, whoa. And that was the first time that I had ever actually up front, and because I see a lot of videos of
Right.
rioters running around and
Right.
and wreaking havoc, and then not talking about the protesters, talking about the rioters who are
Right.
very on the far left.
Right.
And so I get that to a degree. I don't need to see that up in person. I didn't expect to
Right.
have that kind of. So now I feel like I'm in that 10% in the middle who's like,
Yeah.
guys, could we have a beer, sit down,
Yeah.
and relax?
And dialogue.
Yeah. But that's the thing is that it's now the
No.
1% and the 1% on the edges are violent. They will
Right.
not, and that I fear is growing larger and larger and larger.
The idolizers and the demonizers both are wrong. one on both ends. That is an idol or a demon. That person.
I see. Yeah.
Or Trump is an idol or a demon. Biden is an idol or a demon.
It's a dichotomy.
No. This is a very interesting psychology that kids, because I observed that as my kids were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's an age where they only very vocally, they only see black and white.
Yeah.
It's from 10 to 14, 15. And it's just like, no, this is...
I hate Timmy.
I hate this. It's just like...
I love Tommy.
Okay, so the world is black and white.
Sure.
But for grown-ups, the world is a colorful world because God created a very colorful... And they're black and white is part of it. But there are a lot of beautiful colors.
Yeah.
And these people on both ends, they have never grown up.
You think
they just
they
see black
stuck in
and
that,
white.
Yeah.
They just see, Trump is God or Trump is devil. Biden is God, Biden is devil. No, guys, no. The world is more colorful. And it just like, and because they have never grown up, that's how they see life.
Yeah.
And it's very, very bad. It's very bad for the society. Now, also the narrative that happens in a society, it draws people to that direction.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I don't have any option, then do this or that, and then we're stuck. So back to your original question, that I'm the least expert in America at all. Okay, I'm just wondering and looking around what's going on here. But some of the narratives on both sides, I have to say, it's just very concerning. It just, guys, if you talk to each other like this, sooner or later, you're gonna beat each other up, and you're gonna justify murdering each other. And you don't want that. The only way that America is gonna be thrown over, it's from within.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's because this is the word.
It's not going to be Russia. It's not going to be
No.
China.
No.
That's the thing is that we've, they've tried. It's not worth losing that many men.
Yeah.
When you could just sit back and just wait for that thing to bubble over.
Right.
I've said that once. Is that as much as Russia and China do, whatever, but now, I think it's destroyed within.
One thing I need to say though is it's more concerning to me, and equally is it's where the education is going in this country.
Yeah.
Especially with the campuses, and how young people are drawn to ideas that they have no clue where it leads to. Mm-hmm. And they're educated and they throw out words and throw out names and examples that they have not lived. And like communism, like Mao or Che Guevara or Castro, and like, guys, please. I mean, do you know how many people? Do you know that I have relatives who died because of? Do you know that we lost everything? I mean, we were stripped away, literally, all of our wealth twice. Once by the fascist who took all the wealth from my great grandfather, everything. Yeah. The other side of the family, when the communists came, took everything away from us and deported my father and my grandfather and my grandmother. My great uncle was deported to Russia for 11. What I told my my grandmother's brother-in-law, when he was 23, the communists just showed up one day in 56. Just showed up one day and took him, shot him, and sent back his coat to his mother with the bullet holes. Your son is dead. because he was just against communism. So, I mean, could we just, yeah, that was an experiment. Could we just leave it behind? And because no one in this country is murdered for his ideas. So this is a free country. Okay. And it's free because of the social structure that we have. So you can't have free ideas. Once we deny that from people, then it's over.
So I've had this conversation a couple times with my buddy Kyle, is how does, because you're a pastor, how does a pastor, we discussed what happened, we discussed what's happening. Now I'm curious, like, you know, like I said on the phone with you, like it's a breath of fresh air to speak to somebody who's aware of kind of what's going on, who does smell the stench, as an outsider. But how is it that a pastor, you know, it's how is it that a pastor becomes political? And I don't mean that in this. I mean that in a sense. I mean that, and how does a pastor speak truth when, you know? Well, I'll say it. We're far enough into this that I can say this, and if somebody wants to cancel this video, who cares? And frankly, I'm just not worried about it. But I said this to somebody, is that you know, when it came to the Jacob Blake, the Jacob Blake shooting that happened up, and is that what does it look like for a pastor to come out and say, hey, we need to pray for the officers who were indicted as well as the family that was impacted.
Yeah. We need to.
But how does a pastor, how do you can't make a statement like that, right? That's a statement that you wouldn't be able to make because you would be all over the news and you'd be targeted, right?
But the truth of the matter is that, to me, is that we created something in this society that hurts all of us. And we all are, I mean, at different levels and you know, I don't know who started this first. I mean, but someone needs to end it. So I mean, I don't know who gave the first kick and who, but someone will need to end this narrative and this hatred. Otherwise, we're going to devour each other. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what to say other than what the Bible says, that reconciliation comes through Christ.
Yeah.
Forgiveness comes through Christ. Peace comes from, and it's just like, we need to get to a point.
But in a society that even says that we're living in, like, America's seeming, and I'm talking, this is progressively getting worse, is that due process is going out the window. So how is it that a people can, and I may be even speaking up communists in a way, I don't know how, but that in a society that is seeing due process as something that shouldn't be, how is it that you communicate forgiveness from Jesus Christ?
Well, I mean, the way I want to, I have not finished my story. So let me tell because that speaks exactly to it.
Okay.
So for 9 years I have not seen my father.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was total, brutal injustice that he did to me. It was terrible. I mean, he's terrorized me. The way he treated me almost led to my death. And as I started to grow in my faith in Jesus, I came to the realization that I need to go back and forgive him and tell him that. And for two reasons. One is that because Jesus forgave me and he commands me to forgive him. The other is that I had to make a decision that, am I going to be swallowed by self-pity for the rest of my life and just, lamenting over how terrible my childhood was, and how unfair what happened to me, and how brutal, life is to me, and just raise my, you know, fist against everybody. Or I could just go back and release it. And as I release my father out of the prison, I come out from the prison with him. So I went back to him, and I told him that I forgive him. And although he himself told my sister that I wish, my son would be dead, and you could prepare the flowers for his funeral. And but that only comes from Jesus. So the point is that and he never became a believer. He never thought he needs a forgiveness. He never thought. So in a sense, he never reconciled. But I kept going back to him, and every month I called him, and I took my kids when they were little, so he would experience at least to be a grandfather. And when he died, he excluded me from his last will, because he's but it doesn't matter, because it freed me that I forgive him. And the only and because I forgive him, I was not captive anymore. Now, I see a lot of bitterness here, in the society. People are bitter about this and that, and maybe rightfully so. But someone told me that bitterness is a poison that you drink hoping the other one is going to die. So I don't know what the solution, how to make justice in the society with everything that happened.
Yeah.
But I know one thing, that if everybody comes to Christ and reconciles with him, then we're going to reconcile with each other. And that's the only message I can have for America, because I'm not a historian, and I'm not the minister of justice here. I don't know what to do. All I know, that if the gospel is preached, then there could be reconciliation in the nation. But without Christ, there is absolutely zero hope. None. America will perish. So here is the moment for America. Are we really going to repent? And that's why we moved here as missionaries to this nation. Wake up. This is the moment for this nation, that you had been so influential in the world, this nation, for the good and for the bad as well. And you had been given so much grace, because so many things, so many gospel had been preached here. Now, you need to live up to the gospel that had been preached. And here is the opportunity to release people from your prison, from your prison in the heart, from left and right, and come to Jesus, who waits for us, in the middle. Because as we get closer to him, we all are going to get closer to each other as well. And so I don't know if it's political. I don't think it's political. It's spiritual. But as our spiritual state is going to be reflected how we live with each other.
Yeah.
We're not going to start hating each other, and so that's my 2 cents.
Well, you finished your story. I let you.
Well, the story, how it continues, is that God totally redeemed
Yeah.
what I brought to him, because they thought I'm gonna die when I was 18 or 20, and I'm here at 53, and I'm good. It's a miracle. When I met with my wife, and we were dating. I still stuttered. Okay, I mean, the teacher told my mom when I was in 8th grade that you should not send this kid to high school because he's so dumb. And but God changed everything. You know, I was just so behind because of my background and how I grew up. Everything that happened, it happened because of God. He brought me out. He lifted me up. I finished university. I got my THM. I became a missionary. God opened great doors for us to influence programs that open gospel opportunities in many, many countries. And he brought us here. And, it's a if you let God, if you let the loving, luring call of God to influence your heart, okay, you're going to see that he's going to do the impossible with the absolutely nothing you have. Because he's seeking people who have nothing. The nobodies, the stupid, the nobodies of this world. So he could show his glory through them.
It's strange. I feel ashamed.
For what?
I don't know, because I think it's like because you share this story and it becomes more and more real as you share. So at the beginning of this, it was like this. It was just free floating, and then you tell me more and more and more about your life, and it's like. Like, it's admirable the what you've done, like where you came from, how you got here, and it's like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like,
well,
it's the word that came to my mind is just I feel because, well, partly because I think I had a Freudian slip when I looked at you and I go, like a full on Freudian slip. Where I looked at you and said, well, I let you finish your story. And it was like a little bit of wickedness coming out of me. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm not ashamed. I'm ashamed that I said that I spoke that. Well, because it was so subconsciously. And I do that. I don't listen to, I haven't listened to all my podcasts, but I listen sometimes. And when I hear myself is that I'll find sometimes that I'll have Freudian slips. Uh-huh. Saying things that I feel and like it's almost envy that came out of me and the tone of that.
But listen, it's first. It's not me, but the Lord who did it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's every step of the way, because I cannot tell you how many times I felt that I cannot do that. I mean, and I could tell you stories after stories. I mean, when the doctors told us that our daughter will be born with handicap, and they said you have to abort that girl, and we said no, we're not going to do that, because this is a life from God. Okay? And then that daughter is now a medical student and perfectly healthy and beautiful. Or when there were absolutely impossible situations and legally and financially in the ministry where we had to walk on water and believe the Lord is going to show up, or moving here. I never wanted to come here. I mean, we had a very successful ministry. I was leading, 50 full-time staff in Hungary with our ministry and going into schools and all kinds of things and a lot of opportunities. And the Lord convinced us to come here, and there were so many journeys where each one you have to make a decision. Am I going to keep walking by faith and trusting in the Lord, or am I gonna just no? I'm gonna give up. So my encouragement is that God invites you to co-author your story. You know, he wants to take it to a direction, but your decisions, you have the power and the authority to join him as he's writing the story, to co-author with him through his faith, through your obedience, through the hard decisions. And one other thing, my experience is that, and I could be wrong, but my personal journey was that typically the harder, God somehow always wanted us to choose the harder path. And it's just like, I wish it would not that be, would not that way, but it was always the harder.
That's what I mean by like I admire you because the strength it would take. Like for me, I got a hard time asking my boss for a raise.
Mm-hmm.
And then for you, what you did whenever you were a child to look up at the judge and say, look, I like to live with my mother. Mm-hmm. Knowing what was more than likely to happen, that 99.99999% chance that after you said that you would have to go back and live with your father. Yeah. Like the courage that it took for you to say something like that. It's hard for me that it came out of you.
Well, but let me turn it back.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is it's that, gosh, I mean, the courage. This is the way I looked at is this.
Well, it's weird because I see you. Like it's hard for me to like close my eyes, and it almost would have been better if I would have just heard this podcast and not watched it, mm-hmm. because it's so strange how I just jumped to this conclusion that because you're not bulked up, tattooed.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not that guy.
Bright yellow hair with the
right.
part to the side and tan,
right.
Like it's I'm having a difficult time seeing past you, yeah. Like your exterior and seeing your spirit, like.
But listen, the way I look at it is just like the most courageous. I mean, it would be stupidly courageous not to obey God.
Yeah.
And the way I looked at it is just like, I know that one day I'm going to sit down with Jesus and he's going to ask me that, I told you to come here. Oh, I told you to take that responsibility. And you shrank back because you were afraid, because you were looking at the circumstances, because you were listening to other people's opinion.
Yeah.
And I could tell you that at least 3 or 4 major life decisions in our life with my wife, when there was life-changing decisions, every single person except one, and that was Dave. Every single believers, I mean, every single one of them told us, don't do that. Oh, that's too dangerous. That's stupid. Are you crazy? I mean, pastors called me and yelled with me over the phone before we moved here that how dare you leave your ministry in Hungary? Or pastors, when we took over the ministry in Hungary.
Did you run the whole entire ministry, or were you?
I did. But I raised up a new leader.
Yeah.
Okay. Or when I took over that ministry 16 years ago, and it was in a very difficult spot with a lot of deficit and all kinds of problems. Everybody told us, "Oh, don't do that. That's stupid. Who would do that? I mean, it's not fair to you." And I only listen to people, and this is another life lesson. Only listen to people who inspires faith, who inspires obedience to Jesus, who inspires you to walk the impossible. with the nothing you have, because that's what you're called to do. Feed the 5,000. With what, Jesus? Well, with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Just bring it to me. Or Peter, come to me on the water. So, it just, that's what we were, and when I was doubting myself with the decisions that I made, because it was so risky, I could, in each of those decisions, I could have lost everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything. Especially at age 50, moving another country, giving up our retirement, our health insurance, our kids are, everywhere in the world, and leaving elderly parents.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
And that's what everybody told us. But we knew God wanted us to do that.
Yeah.
And we had security and give up, we had our house and it just like, but God wanted us to do that. But I was more scared of disobeying Jesus, because I was afraid that I know that one day he's going to sit down with me. And I'm not going to have 1 millisecond to tell him, oh, Joe or Jim told me not to. He said, I told you to do it. Why have you listened to them? I'm going to have my talk with them. But you should have been listening to me and not to them. So that's the, Jesus talks about, I think it's in John 12, if I remember, 12. Jesus talks about that and telling the Pharisees that how could you believe if you seek the glory of man? So if we seek approval and affirmation and the praise of man, then Jesus says, we cannot believe in God. So that's another lesson I've learned through the journey, that, the audience of one. We have one audience, and that's the Almighty God, and I only need to please him. And if I do that with all my heart and effort, then he's going to walk the path, and he's going to make my path straight, as he promises in Isaiah 42. I'm going to go before you, and I'm going to level the places, and I'm going to break through the gates of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. And try to live that, and he'll do miracles. Because life is hard. I mean, life sucks. Life is hard. The only way to get through it is if we are holding the hands of a loving Father, and I'm scared. I don't want to look down, Father, because we're walking through a very scary valley, and it's dark.
Well, I expected to have a conversation with you, Gábor, but
Okay.
I didn't know that you'd make me feel things. You make me think like it's just, I don't know. I don't know what I thought inviting you here. It was almost, if I were to be honest, it would probably be that I don't know. Part of it was that I see a political mess in America, and I thought, well,
which is true. There is a political mess.
Yeah, maybe Gábor could share his story. Another part of me was like, well, I did tell him like 2 years ago that I wanted him on my podcast, and I try to be a man of my word. But thanks, I guess,
thank you
for sharing your story.
Well,
and
thank you for inviting me.
Is that booklet? Does that have anything more, or is that?
Oh yeah,
did you give
it
all
has
to me?
more.
Okay.
It has more little nuances to the story, and more what happened later. It's just like during our marriage, and there were a lot of challenges.
Did you write that Was that a
It was
sit down
before we moved to the U.S. I wrote that because I kind of wanted to summarize our journey up to that point, especially I wrote it to my kids.
yeah?
It's just like, kids, you need to know where you come from,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very hard to find your path forward if you do not know where you're from. Because you're born, you like it or not, you're born into a story, into other people's story.
Yeah.
You're born into your family's story. I'm born into my family story. And the story that you are writing and you're living is influenced by the story behind you. And you need to steward that story well. The difficulties as well. And that shapes you. But that should not hinder you. And the only way it cannot hinder you if you control it. The only way to control it if you know it and own it. So once you know your story, you can own your story. And then you can correct, and once you own it, you can control it. So the story will not control you. The pain of the past will not control you. And will not hinder you. And a lot of people are trapped right there because they're coming from terrible stories. And they are not able to verbalize it. And once that helped me to, kids, this is our story up to here. So I want to be the author with God of my story. And I'm not going to let my past control my future.
How old are your kids?
My kids 25, 22, and 18.
25, 22, and 18.
And they are still, starting to live out their own story.
Yeah. They're living in an interesting time.
Very interesting time. And it's a very difficult time. And I'm concerned for them.
Yeah.
Because to find your path and find truth, where truth is so subjective right now, and everything is questioned, it's just a very hard time to stick to the truth.
Yeah.
And truth became horizontal instead of vertical. Vertical means God gave the truth, His truth to us. And I believe that what He says is true, and I live my life in relation to that truth. Now truth is horizontal. You think this is true. I think that is true. He thinks fourth thing is true. So whose truth is going to win? The ones who has more power. So that's why it's so dangerous.
So you're in a pretty big objection to the idea of your truth.
I'm very, very much objective against any subjective truth.
Yeah.
Truth is objective, has to be. Otherwise, we're gonna have a Hunger Game. And in the Hunger Game, it's gonna happen what Darwin said, the fittest of the survival of the fittest. Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
The strongest will destroy the weakest. And in the name of their subjective truth.
In the name of God, in the name of self, in the name of...
self. They're going to create God out of their truth, just like the communists did. A utopia became the truth.
What's our time, Jacob?
I have no idea.
I guess I have my phone.
Some
20.
people are wondering how they can support your ministries, Gábor. Like, can you plug some of the things that you're involved in
Yeah.
and how they...
I can. Do you want me to type in or?
Oh no, just talk
Oh,
about it.
yeah. Talk about. Yeah.
I can. What I can do is I can just put in the description below.
Yeah. I
if
can.
yours-
My email address, or we have. I'm with.
I'd say your email address out loud
Yeah.
in case there's a billion people that see it tomorrow.
Right.
But I guess I can say that to you because you believe in miracles.
I do believe in miracles.
A lot of times I'll look at people across the table and I'll say, in the rare case that this hits a billion or million views, I'd rather you say your email than for me to put publish it.
Right. So yeah, my email is my name. So Gabor. That's my first name, Gábor, and my family name is Gresz. So Gábor Grész @gmail.com. It's that simple. So if you want to shoot me an email, I can. But what we do, we're working with Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ, and with Dave Robinson, we co-lead a new initiative called Church Movements. Because right now in the U.S., by the way, which is it's very sobering, 2.5 million people leave the church every single year, and 4,000 churches closes. So the U.S. is the fastest decline of Christianity in the world.
And that statistic probably isn't including what happened this year.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean that was a 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
With coronavirus.
well, the coronavirus, which I just read that during it was a May statistics, the April-May, 48% of those who are regular churchgoers have not went in that 2 months, did not show up in any online service. None. 48% of the regular churchgoers. So we see a tremendous decline in Christianity, and especially in the younger generation. 86% of the millennial generation is uninvitable to church. And in the Gen Z, which is the youngest generation, atheism doubled. So what we see is that churches are struggling in how to reach, how to speak into people's lives. While right now 160 million Americans already are saying that they are post-Christian, meaning they don't believe in God, they don't believe in the Bible, they don't believe in Jesus. And that number is growing 4% every single year. So very soon, this nation is going to be a non-Christian nation.
So, and with those statistics, then when does it become that? Is it
Well, I mean, if 4% growth happens in that, then it means by 2025, over 70% of this nation will deny God. And if you think about it, we need to change the paradigm how we do church, because the way we think about church right now is that it's a pulpit ministry, it's a Sunday program, and people are showing up on Sunday, but church should be where it's all of our lives should reflect our following with our relationship with Jesus, and every believer needs to be equipped to be a living witness of Christ where they work, live, and play.
Yeah.
And we have not done a really good job in that in the church, because we thought, well, we're a Christian nation, 80% of people show up in church. Really, the pastors are doing a tremendous job. But while we were doing those pulpit ministries and Bible studies, half of our population just walked away from Jesus. Half. And that number is exponentially growing. So people are not willing to come back and come to big events. The only way we can change that if we equip believers, everyday believers, to live missionally where they work, live, and play. But that's not going to happen through the pulpit ministry. It's going to happen through small groups. Homes are changing. So what we do in our ministry is we equip people to live it missionally and to multiply those missional small communities that...
Well, if you think about it, the coronavirus is almost the best thing to happen to the...
Right. It's really...
I'm not going to finish that sentence, but you know where I'm going.
I know. But listen, I mean, we are part of something called Global Alliance of Church Multiplication. Just 3 weeks ago, we had a conference with 4,000 people online. And in the Global South, meaning Asia, Africa, Latin America, it's unbelievable what's happening with the growth of Christianity, even through COVID.
Are they doing Zoom over there?
Yes, in small groups.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious how that would look if because Christianity is about 20 years behind on some things, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, like if you really thought about it, then what would it look like to say have somebody from Zimbabwe who speaks English, who grew up in Zimbabwe? It doesn't even have to be perfect English, but gets on there and then speaks to a community and a small group in Georgia and just
And it
shares their
happens.
story.
It happens with us.
Yeah.
I mean, we have guys from Latin America, from Nigeria. We have a guy who's part of our coaching group. I mean, it happens.
Sure.
And the local community multiplication, because people can still meet and gather in small groups if we equip people to do that and live missionally in their neighborhoods. So that's the paradigm shift that needs to happen. A lot of people are hoping that we're going to go back like we did, before COVID. And to a degree we will. I mean, and we have to. But churches are going to come out on the other end much differently. And they will have to. Because a lot of people will not come back to church. They will just not. But because they were not real believers, or they were just church, they showed up in church, every third month, every second month, whatever.
Or they, didn't feel connected.
Right. Now they
didn't have
completely lost that connection.
Yeah. They didn't feel intimacy. I mean, that's kind of part of my story,
Right.
but we're not here to tell my story.
No, but it's
But
true.
losing intimacy is that just because, that small groups, like I was in a small group for a while, and, we didn't go anywhere. We didn't hang out outside of the small group. I mean, you have the church on Sunday and you meet up and you talk to them, and then you don't ever talk to them the rest of the week. And then you also go to the small group, and then you go and don't really hang out on the outside. Me and Jacob are an anomaly.
Uh-huh. But
Right, Jacob?
But let me tell you, he's, but authenticity.
Yeah.
People are looking for authenticity, and they're more prone to that than having another sermon. Because of the internet, and because of the availability, content is not the most important thing. I mean, it's really important in churches. But content was not available 20 years ago. You had to go to a gathering to get the content.
Yeah.
Or the best preacher came in town. Okay. But now, I can listen to any preacher, anyone online.
Yeah.
The best ones. Okay. But what I'm not going to get, or the best programs, even for free, I can download it and walk through it. Phenomenal Bible studies. But I'm not going to get what? Authentic, personal relationships.
Yeah.
One-on-one or small groups. And that's where we need to win. And that's where we can win if we equip people how to do that. Our neighborhood or something. So, simplicity, simple content that's multiplicable. That's important, but authenticity is way more important.
Yeah.
And accessibility. That's the third one.
That's the easy part, though.
Right.
Accessibility is the easy part.
But this is what I mean, that I, as a minister or missionary, need to be available to that person.
Yeah.
So I'm accessible to him.
Sure.
Okay. The pastor accessible to the congregation.
Yeah.
And it's not just, a head figure somewhere who's showing up in the pulpit and says a sermon. So in a sense, the church will move will need to move from a preaching only type of ministry to a more comprehensive, which is very biblical, because in Ephesians 4 we read about that God gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherd teachers to the church to equip the saints for the ministry. So all those gifts are given, not just the shepherd teacher. It's not just the pastor who's speaking. God gave other gifts, evangelists and apostles, to come alongside of every person in the church so everybody will be equipped to do the ministry. So the pastor's job and the evangelist's job is not that you come on Sunday and you feel good, you've heard a good sermon. But actually you need to walk away with, oh, I know how to serve others. And that's different. So in a sense, we're living in a we're going to experience a huge change in the future of the church, and we have to.
Yeah. Or else it hits
All right.
70%,
Yes.
and then 80, 90, 100%.
Right. What happens is 80% of the churches right now in the U.S. are declining or plateauing. 16% are growing, but only through transitional growth, which means that from another church. And only 4% are growing through conversion. So what it means that there is a shrinking pie that we just redistribute. But the pie is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
We just don't feel it because the country is so big. Oh, we still have 5,000 people showing up in our church.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, oh, everybody's a believer. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. In the global south.
We don't have the perspective of.
Yeah,
I think that's I have the conversation with COVID with the perspective is that more than 200,000 have died. Well, I can't even fathom $200,000 in my bank account.
Oh yeah, I can't either.
let alone 200,000 people who have passed away.
Yeah.
Or died of COVID. Until you look even, in Clay County right now, there's 250,000 people roughly.
Right.
And there have been 40 something. I think it's up to 44 people who have died.
Yeah.
That gives you a little bit better perspective. But
right.
even then, when you're just taking a county, from going from the nation down to a state, down to not only Kansas City Metro, down to a county, like that is still a number that you can't.
Yeah.
It gives you a better perspective. But so.
Well, it's
so
an
when you
interesting
look at
experience. We always see things through our personal lenses, and what shapes our personal lenses is our personal experience and the environment that surrounds us.
Yeah.
And last week I talked to a guy who because where he lives, he thinks it's a no-brainer that everybody. Oh, I mean, this is a Christian nation. Everybody is a believer. Yes, in your town. But go to Portland, go to Seattle, go to New York, go to Chicago, you can't even imagine. That's what's out there. Because
go to Hays, Kansas.
Right.
I'm just throwing out of a name.
Right.
I don't know.
Whatever.
The Hays in Kansas could be the most.
Because we create our subcultures.
Yeah.
And the only country that had the ability to create a Christian subculture is the U.S. We create our own schools. We create our own, sport gyms, the church.
Well, that might be the biggest downfall is that we are able to create echo chambers.
Absolutely. That's a critical.
Which is the biggest blessing and the biggest curse. Okay.
So what did we do? Well, I mean, the public schools started to take out God.
Yes.
Well, we're going to create our own Christian school.
Yeah.
Okay, why? Because we had the financial means to do it.
Yeah.
Other countries did not. China cannot do that. Yet Christianity is growing, outgrew the U.S. Christianity. Africa, they cannot do that. In Europe, we couldn't do that under communism. So, but here, because we could do it, we created. Instead of trying to change and influence the main culture.
Yeah.
We just draw ourselves out.
Yeah. So my question there is that do you think that is a good thing to do or like it comes up in question is with Facebook is it Facebook is censoring banning people why can't they just make a conservative Facebook make a conservative Facebook and the constant thing I hear is like No, you don't want to. You're dividing the nation when you do that. When you say have the private Christian school here and then have the public school right here. I mean, what is it that?
Listen, I totally understand why someone sends their kids to private school. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
my son goes to a public school, and I get it why people
My
do
nephews
it.
go. Yeah.
Okay, I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some things are screwed up. I mean, terribly in the public school system.
Yeah.
But it was a process how we got there. But all I'm saying that if we keep creating systems that are not replicable, then we cannot say that that's the Christian model.
Sure.
Okay, because
Replicable to the further generations.
for anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't have the means to send your kids to private school, then that's not available to you. So it means that for a certain segment of society, like me and a huge other parts, private school is not available because it's not financially not feasible.
Sure.
So what do? If you keep creating systems, that it's available to a certain segment of society because we want to protect ourselves from the main narrative of the society, or we create church buildings with all the perks, with the gyms and everything and gym memberships,
Coffee.
Which I love, by the way, and it's great things. Nothing wrong with that, but think about that. Is that we want to multiply the church. We want to spread the gospel, influence the society everywhere in the world. Will they be able and will they have the means to create everything we think it's needed to raise our families in a healthy Christian environment?
The Mormons are doing a pretty dang good job of that.
Okay, so we think, well, I mean,
I kind of wanted to just throw a wrench at you.
I know, that's what they do, but I don't think it's replicable.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, and if someone is blessed and have the opportunity to do it, live with it. It's fine. I'm just saying that we're not going to be able to reach the world with that kind of model. The model needs to be super cheap.
So accessible. It needs to be affordable.
Right.
And universal.
Right. And so replicable.
Yeah.
So just strip away everything. What is it? If you take the content, what is it that's replicable outside of your cultural context? And it can survive.
So I threw one wrench at you. I want to throw one more.
Okay.
I guess my question, do you believe that there can be a world that can everybody be a Christian in the world at the same time?
It's never going to happen.
Okay.
I don't think theologically that's where we're going to head.
Yeah.
Until Jesus is going to come back and he's going to establish his dominion, and there's going to be a new earth and new heaven.
Okay.
But regardless, we have a mission.
Yeah.
The church has a mission. It's an expensive mission. We need to expend. Okay, we can't retrieve. We need to expend the gospel and advance the kingdom. So, just think about it. In China, somehow, people live in house churches. Most people don't. Most churches don't have any building capacity.
There's no church and steeple.
No pulpits. They come together in a little room like that, and if more than 10 or 15 comes together, then the police will raid them.
So it's kind of like here in America during COVID.
Yet Christianity is spreading like a wildfire.
Yeah.
or in Africa, or in India.
Is Russia also filled with missionaries?
No, Russia is not. It's wherever is the state church
Yeah.
is present. It's harder. So I'm just saying that if we would say that planting a church means we need a building, we need a pastor, we need a choir or a band, we need this, a children's worker, then
That's not affordable.
That's because in most places, the biggest part of Christianity, that's not how they function. The way they function is through house churches.
Yeah.
So, but we just don't know it. When we think about church, automatically we think about the gathering place, the meeting, and the event, and the pastor.
Well, you think of the exterior.
Right. But the church is
Building.
us. It's us.
Yeah.
You and I, the people, the follower of Jesus, who are following Jesus in community, worshiping him, and living missionally, and spreading the word of God. That's the church. So and there are functions that is expressed in the church. There are elders, and there are deacons. So there is some kind of leadership present, even in a house church.
Sure.
So it's. I hope in the U.S. we're gonna see just a breakthrough. So that's why we're here, and that's what we're praying for. That's gonna happen.
Well, I did build this table.
It's really nice. I love it. Awesome.
Thank you.
It serves its purpose.
It does indeed.
And I hope that people realize that they have a purpose that they were created for.
Yeah.
You know. Thank you, my friend.
Gabor.
That was a COVID, not a COVID safe handshake.
Yeah, I forgot about that. We got to do the whole
Yeah, we got to do
bump
that.
the elbow thing. I think we'll be all right.
I think so too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys.
You can go ahead and thanks for listening.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Dang, man. It was nice
Great.
talking to you.
Nice talking to you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thanks.